Anyone who talks about or likes or even watches Beastars and dares to talk about it publicly ends up saying, "But I'm not a furry," for pretty obvious reasons. And that's fair. At least those people have the decency to recognize what others will immediately notice before delving any further into their content and create a defense straight away. It's those people that don't say anything at all that you have to worry about. Anyway, today I'll be talking about Beastars and how it's a great modern example of integrating politics with media. And it's not what it looks like. I'm not a furry, Ma. I promise. I know there's a naked bunny on my computer. It's for research, Ma. Please. I was trying my best to avoid watching Beastars, despite knowing little to nothing about it, up until that which shall not be named shut down my college and deposited a whole lot of free time into my unwilling hands. I feel like I've watched all of YouTube and most of Netflix, and seeing as I've watched The Office in its entirety 13 times, I had to start watching things I normally wouldn't watch, lest I end up watching all of Pornhub too. And surprisingly, it was good. It confused me all to hell, but I liked it. Beastars was first serialized as a manga and Weekly Shonen Champion on September 8th, 2016. It was turned into an anime in October of 2019, and seeing as I've only seen the anime, we're going to focus on just that. The story takes place in a world of modern, civilized, anthropomorphic animals with a cultural divide between the carnivores and herbivores. Now, I know that everyone compares it to Zootopia, but honestly, it's like a more adult version of Zootopia. Legoshi, a large gray wolf, is our protagonist. He is a timid and quiet student of Cherryton Academy where he lives in a dorm with several other carnivorous students. He's a member of the school's drama club and works as a stagehand. After a fellow drama club member and student is brutally murdered and devoured in the night, the unease and distrust between the herbivore and carnivore students begins to grow. At the same time, Legoshi has a fateful encounter with Haru, a small dwarf rabbit, and begins developing complex feelings, which he must determine the nature of, be it predatory hunger or romantic love. I finished watching it relatively quickly, as I enjoyed the action-packed story and rambunctious characters. As I watched, I knew there was a good message. A big, deep, important message, and yet I couldn't and still can't decide exactly what that message is. I've heard people argue about toxic masculinity, that it's talking about racism or LGBT themes, and all of which were argued well enough for me to accept any of them as the intended message. However, there's a certain level of vagueness that makes it difficult to definitively say what it means to say, unlike a lot of modern shows which portray their message in a very preachy manner. And that is why I like Beastars so much. It works because it's confident enough in its message to not spell it out for viewers, and it's smart enough not to preach to us. In recent years, as political correctness, social justice warriors, and the woke movement have risen in popularity, so has diversity in media. As a biracial LGBT woman, you'd think that I'd like that. After all, I'm a part of the demographic these movies, shows, and books are pandering to. But I don't. And I'm not alone in not liking them. While a lot of people attribute this general dislike to racism or bigotry, for a lot of people, it's just that the media isn't crafted well. That's not to say that no one dislikes diversity because they are racist. I've been watching a bunch of comic book channels like Nerdrotic and Just Some Guy, and quite a few criticize The Witcher for its forced diversity, but like everyone else that I talked to about it didn't notice or consider the like 3 black people included to be forced diversity. But before we get into bad examples of implementing messages, let's talk about the good. When people compare modern Star Trek to its older iterations, particularly the original series, they often state that things back then weren't so political. And that's true, but it's also not. The original series is not perfect, and was most definitely a product of the Cold War and Civil Rights eras, but managed to cover political and often controversial topics in entertaining ways. Abortion was one of them, when Captain Kirk is kidnapped to provide illnesses to kill off and lessen the population of an overpopulated planet, which, oof, that was a really good one. I've seen that post on Tumblr a lot. You can see that in Chekhov and Sulu, who were Russian and Japanese respectively. They were treated as empathetic and relatable characters, which contrasted sharply with how they were portrayed in other media at the time. Now, I know that y'all came here for Beastars, not Star Trek, But I think that it's important to point out how politics and ideological agendas can be included in a show without becoming boring or preachy. The message of Star Trek was obvious. It was, we can be better, we can try to be better. But it never felt like it was being shoved down our throats. In Beastars, the basic plot is boy meets girl, wants to eat her, and falls in love instead. Or does he? The world building, which is really well done, it seems almost completely separate from our own world. It allows us to focus less on what does this translate to in our world and more on, is he going to eat her? The questions that movies like Zootopia decline to ask, such as what do predators eat or how do natural relationships like prey and predator work here, are answered. The conflict between prey and predators can be attributed to the unease and distrust between gender, race, ethnic groups, basically any two groups that have conflict with each other. The fact that it's not clear that, unlike Zootopia, you can't just say, oh, predators are black or ethnic people and prey are white people, or it just makes it great. It's more complex than that. The inclusion of Legoshi struggling with his predatory urges, as well as the feelings of helplessness that the prey feel, make these struggles more complex than something that can be immediately translated to our world, though they undoubtedly can be. And that confusion, that is what makes it so easy to enjoy. Unlike so many other shows and franchises, Beastars focuses foremost on the story, leaving the message and meaning up to the viewer. And with that, let's talk about the bad. Star Wars and Doctor Who are some of the staples of fandom, and have been around for a very long time. Longer than I've been here. Like most media, they both leaned left, and even in their early days. And while it's true there were some missteps and minor problems, no one could really claim that they were racist or bigoted works. In recent times, even old fans have forsaken the show, usually complaining about the forced diversity. But the diversity was always there. What's changed is that by trying to show off their diversity and furthermore their messages of woman good, POC good, white man bad, their diverse characters are no longer treated as characters who happen to be women or happen to be people of color, but must be treated as their defining trait first and foremost. Something else I noticed is that in these movies where they try to push a progressive theme or message, they tend to put less work into the plot and general story than they would otherwise. For example, look at Captain Marvel. I don't hate Captain Marvel by any means, but Carol doesn't have any character growth, and the plot more or less drives on around her. None of the other main characters have any depth, and Carol herself is flat except for being determined, despite everyone telling her that she'd be incapable. And yes, a lot of people disliked her because she was a woman, or because of her actress, or any number of things, but she also failed to hit home because of these deficits. But no one can talk about these deficits because pointing out those problems makes you unfeminist and not woke and bad. The ugly. In conclusion, I'm still confused about Beastars, and that's a good thing. I'm more or less just annoyed with everything that's riding the coattails of the current popular political messages of the younger generations because they're pandering without trying, and that makes for bad media. I hope that some talented people will continue to make shows and movies like Beastars where the point of making good media is more important than the message behind it. For now, this is where we part. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.